Everybody, as you get settled in, we have Ra Medical Systems here, Ra being the Egyptian god of the sun, for those of you that didn't know. And I'm going to let David Jenkins take over here. Enjoy the presentation.
All right, thanks a lot. So we are a medical device company, and we're focused on cardiac electrophysiology. Some people don't know what we call EP, exactly what it is, but you may know about clogged arteries and heart attacks, putting in stents into those arteries. That's what we call the plumbing side of cardiology. So we're on the electrical side, which is irregular heartbeats. You know, atrial fibrillation is a very common one that everybody knows. And we are focused in kind of what we think is going to be a new growing area, which is on the ventricular side. And so we'll discuss that just a little bit. We just merged. We did a reverse merger into actually our private company into this company called Ra Medical Systems. They were working on some other catheter stuff. We completed the merger in the first quarter, and we have now shuttered that business, and we've terminated all their employees and all that type of stuff. So really from April 1st moving forward, we are a brand new company, and at some point we might even change the name here. So everybody's seen this slide before, but basically what we have is innovative products designed to improve patient outcomes, reduce costs, and reduce procedure times in the EP labs. Let me tell you, this is my third cardiac electrophysiology company. We have a little bit of a slide here in a minute about my background, but I've been in medical devices for 40 years. And I've done other companies as well, but in electrophysiology, I like it because it's very intriguing, it's very technical, and I think this is probably an area that has more growth than other medical device areas. And what's nice is because I've been in it for so long, I know to go after unique and different products that are additive to what they're doing in the labs. So basically what have we done with, post this merger? We've shuttered the business, and we've brought about a significant reduction in the burn. So you really have to think of us as a completely different business under new management. The old management, I didn't quite get it. They had a lot of warts on the company. They had a cash burn that was absolutely amazing for a company of their size. And so with new management, it's basically bringing in a whole new attitude, right? We have three products that are out there, FDA cleared on the market right now. So VIVO is the one I was talking about, getting us into the ventricular side of things. And really what we're doing is non-invasively, before a procedure starts, we tell the physician, hey, this is exactly where that arrhythmia originates. He can put the catheter right there, ablate the tissue, and he's in and out of the procedure in less than an hour. Versus the way it's done today, these procedures, there's not very many done, and it's because they're 4 to 6 hour procedures, okay? AMIGO is our robotic device. We brought that into the market. We believe it needs a little bit more cash behind it, and we're looking for a partner to pursue that a little bit further. And then finally, this LOCKET closure device, we have just introduced that in the market just a couple of weeks ago, and we presented it at this symposium called the International Society for Left Atrial Appendage. If nobody knows, you actually have an appendage in your left atrium. If you have atrial fibrillation, it causes the blood to stagnate and has the potential to throw off a clot, which has the potential to cause a stroke. So they're what that ISLA group is doing is putting in a kind of a seal to close up that left atrial appendage. But anyway, at that procedure, a doctor, unbeknownst to us, he had our first device, and he goes, hey, this is the end of the procedure, but let me show you something that's really new, and it's pretty cool. So that was a pretty good introduction for that product. There's a picture of me in a little bit more casual setting. This is a lot to read into, but I have been successful in these companies in the past, and as a result, I have money to put into the businesses myself. With this company, I've put in over $30 million. So this is my third company in cardiac electrophysiology. The first one, the technology was sold off to GE. The second one, we sold the company to St. Jude, which is now part of Abbott. And in this whole field, you know, the big boys are all in there, J&J, Abbott, GE is certainly in there, Boston Scientific, Medtronic. So, and the reason they're in there, if you read, in fact, just last week coming out, I think J&J came out and says, and again, our electrophysiology division is growing in the high upper teens. And you'll see this throughout all of them. So it's a big growth area for not only companies, but the hospitals themselves are creating a lot of revenue out of electrophysiology. When I first got into the business, it was some harebrained scientific engineer doctor down in the basement of a hospital. And today they put them up right next to the front door. When you walk in, this is your EP clinic right over here. So yes, I own a lot of the equity. The good thing about that is, you know, that's a reduction in the actual float that's out there. And I don't intend to be selling any of this as something I'm keeping for the long term. I think, you know, I've told everybody you can put 100,000 in, 500,000 in, and 3 and 4 years from now, you'll see something that's worth 5 to 10 times that money. And that's based on really what I've done in the past and the ability to exit and my knowledge within electrophysiology. Okay. So yeah, that first one, I think, Cardiolab, we sold that to GE, 62 million. EP Med Systems, we sold that to St. Jude. This is a company that was not in electrophysiology, but used EP type technology. Basically, it was a pacemaker device used for neurostimulation. We sold that to Medtronic for $267 million. If we look at this global EP market, I think I've told you what everybody's doing out there, and it's compounded annual growth rate of 9.4%. That comes out of, you know, a market survey. But if you look at the last 10 years, that number is much bigger than that. So it's well into the teens. Population growth, okay. 5% of the population over age 65 has atrial fibrillation, and that crosses all borders. So it's not just a lifestyle disease like your clogged arteries are. So you'll see just as high an incidence of atrial fib over in Japan that you see here in the United States. On the ventricular side, you know, what do they do with most of these patients now? They put in an implantable defibrillator. If you've had a heart attack and we know your cardiac output is low, right? They just put in one of those things. Well, hey, you're not curing the patient at all. You're really just giving them something that if they fall down, it's a way to revive them. Well, guess what? You know, treatment with heart attacks, I mean, you can hit the hospital door and they measure time to put a stent in you, right? So they can get those stents in 11 and 12 minutes from the time you hit the hospital door. As a result, the muscle damage in your heart is much smaller. So instead of having a real scarred up ventricle, now you have some specific scar that just creates one little rhythm. And now we have much more of the ability to go in. Since we've learned so much about ablation with atrial fib, now we can put a catheter in, ablate that tissue on the ventricle side, and start curing these patients. Well, guess what? How many heart attacks are there in the U.S.? You know, there's at least 2 million, right? I think I might even have a slide on that right here. So we know that 20% of those are prone to sudden cardiac death. Well, that's 400,000 patients that should all be getting an ablation, right? And today that number is maybe 60,000, somewhere in there. So it's a pretty low number. So we think all the growth in this area and the reimbursement is going to be on the ventricular side. On the atrial fib, over the last 10 years, 15 years, that's now grown into something where it's pretty easy for the physician to do and accomplish, and they're doing those procedures in less than an hour. They make a lot of money on those. The reimbursement is now coming down a little bit. But on the ventricular side, reimbursement is pretty healthy. So numbers are big, right? And this is just the U.S., right? So if we look at atrial fibrillation now worldwide, we're doing about 500,000 procedures. So we think this has the potential to be a number much larger than what they're doing in AFib today. So I guess I just said that, right? And all of these players, they're firmly entrenched, and guess what? They used to find a technology and they would kind of arm wrestle and pay anywhere between $100 and $300 million to bring that technology in. And that's technology that has no revenue, that has not been approved yet, still in a clinical study. Guess what? The last numbers that are coming out there are 600 million, 900 million, non-approved, non-revenue, right? Boston Scientific just bought a company, and all they do is make a needle that helps puncture a hole between the two atriums so that you can put your catheters over there. They were doing about 100 million in revenue. They bought it out for 1.7 billion. So why do they want to pay that much? Because it gets the whole game going in this whole area of electrophysiology. It is really a big growing market. So we're out there with 3 products, and all of those can serve as an entry point into the facility and into that one physician, right? So the EP physician, basically, he says, yep, I like it. Okay, let's figure out with administration how to bring it in, try it out, and then get a proposal moving forward. But see, the 3-product solution, that all of together, it kind of reduces the procedure time, but it also just allows us to have that big entry point where we come up, oh, if you don't want this product, how about this one, right? So, and really it's quite helpful. So let's talk about the first product. We call it VIVO, which stands for View into Ventricular Onset, right? And basically what it is, it's a non-invasive way, using the latest, greatest term out there, but we've been using it for quite some time, artificial intelligence, right? To figure out where that's coming from. So we take a normal 12-lead ECG that these patients are you put these on all of the time, and then we marry that to a 3D image, so either an MRI or a CAT scan. So now we know where the heart is in 3D space. We know where all the electrodes are that are on your chest, because what we do is we take a 3-dimensional photograph of the torso of the body with the electrodes on there. And then after that, we use our artificial intelligence. We have 2,500 different points on the heart, both on the inside and the outside. We know the wall thickness from that MRI scan, and we're able to come up with something that pinpoints exactly where the arrhythmia occurs. So this is it, step 1. Basically, you take an MRI or a CT, and if you've had one previously in the past 6 months or a year ago, we can use that too. Step 2, we use a 3D camera, so now we know where each electrode is in relation to the heart. Every heart's a little bit different, right? They're a little bit cockeyed, your chests are a little bit fatter, and so to have the exact location where each electrode is, which is our patented technology, that allows these algorithms to really be much more precise. And then with that, we come up on the computer screen with it's a 3-dimensional image, and kind of spin that image around and figure out, is that spot on the inside? Is it on the outside? Is it on, some of the musculature that's inside there? There's a moderator band that can go across, and we can figure out, are you on the right side or the left side of that? So it's really, really quite accurate. When we first brought this product out, I was scared that if we were only 90 or 92% accurate, the doctors would say, hey, I don't want to figure out, is this patient the 8% that we don't have accuracy on? And we're really pleased that we have that 99% accuracy, and we measure that against using internal catheters to find that as well. The model for this is pretty simple, right? We have a PC and some software that's on it. We have these consumables. There's some patches that we position on the chest when we take that photograph so we can marry it more easily to the 3D scan. We sell those for between $1,500 and $2,000. And then the whole setup up front is about $45,000. So we're below kind of a threshold where you have to get into long-term budgeting process with the hospital. And but it's kind of a razor blade type approach. Okay. Oh, so yeah, we've kind of taken a slow approach with COVID. A lot of hospitals say we don't even want to see anything new. We don't want anybody coming in here. So for the last couple of years, it was kind of a little bit shut down. And so at that time, we didn't hire any salespeople or any of that. Now We have just since the merger, we've raised another $8 million on top of what the cash they had in the bank, and we've hired 5 sales guys to cover the U.S. We have 4 clinical people behind them, and we now have in the U.S. over 70 sites that we're now talking to about bringing it in. In Europe, that number is it's a little over 20 now. So yeah, active sites. I would point out this one, Heart Hospital in New Mexico. It's interesting because I thought it was a little backwaters thing, and I said, well, you know, we're going to travel out there several times, and, you know, going to spend a lot of effort in it. Last year, they bought $100,000 of disposables, right? So if we can kind of take a look at you know, what we have in place now, if those 70, we all get them up and running, not by the end of this year, but even by the end of next year. So we've got 100 hospitals out there, and they're all doing $100,000. It's kind of going from 0 up to 10 million in revenue pretty quickly with this one product, okay? So this is kind of the key takeaway on this. We are the gatekeeper to doing ventricular procedures, right? So we believe the growth over the next 10 years is going to be on the ventricular side. People also have, you know, not only just the fast heartbeats, ventricular tachycardia, which has the possibility to run into ventricular fibrillation, right? If your ventricle is fibrillating, within minutes you'll die because the blood's just not pumping. But there's another little thing out there called a premature ventricular contraction. That's very annoying to a patient. He wants it gone, and there's quite a bit of focus on those as well. So a big population there. Let me go to the next product, what we call the LOCKET suture retention device. And basically what it is, so you put these catheters into the body, up into the heart, right? And you put them in through the groin. And typically, like AFib procedures are putting 2 in here and 2 in over here. Then they pull them out, and then what happens, right? Well, you can have a gorgeous case, and you could say, oh, look what I did. Look at all of our electrical maps that we've created and all that. But if you kind of screw this up, patient's not going to be happy. So as they pull those catheters out, you've got a little bit of a geyser of blood that's coming out of there. And so what do? They hold manual pressure on there, right? Sometimes on top of that manual pressure, they will put a couple of stitches in to make it better, and they'll tie those down in a knot, but you still have to hold it. Then they put a bandage on, and then they're holding it while they take the patient, you know, out to the recovery room. And typically they're holding that groin for about a half an hour or so. So, and if you've got 2 groins going, you've got maybe 2 people kind of doing that, which is not very good, right? So what did we come up with? Hey, if you're going to put those stitches in, why not just bring the stitches up, slide them through our little thing. So we've got kind of that saucer on the bottom that interfaces with the skin of the patient. And we've got little stopcock type method there. And you just close it, and you're able to cinch down with the suture material. Now you've applied your own pressure. And so far, we've just have a couple of hospitals using it, and they absolutely love it. So, and what's nice too is when this goes out to the recovery room, the nurse simply turns the knob, pulls away our LOCKET device, and then just takes the suture and pulls it out. So she's not kind of hunting down in there. She's not removing a bandage and oops, the guy's still bleeding and all that, and then taking her scissors and trying to remove sutures and all that. So this is a prototype picture here, but the actual one actually has a clear bottom to it so that you can see if there's any blood oozing. But so far, our you know, what are you looking for with a device like this? You're looking for what is the time to hemostasis, meaning the blood has stopped, right? And so far, it looks like on the first 50 patients, it's minutes. So I don't know what that means, 3 or 4 minutes, somewhere in there. And then your next kind of goal is what's the time to ambulation, meaning when can the patient get up and walk around? And that right now is looks like 2 hours is about the time frame for that. And then can you do same day discharge, right? So all of that stuff has worked pretty well, and I guess that's basically what I'm saying here. So it's simple to place, easy to remove. The patient does, if you're kind of just using the sutures and tying it down, there is pinching and it is a little bit painful. They would prefer not to have that. And so we are keeping track of this initial clinical trial and the the patients all seem to be pretty satisfied with it. So we are going to do some future studies kind of proving that out, but more than anything is kind of tracking the money side of it. There's another company out there called Vascade, or their product is called Vascade. And basically, they've got to put one in each of those holes. So if you have 2 holes here and 2 holes there, you've got to put 4 in. They're a little bit more time consuming to put those in. And they're $250 each, right? We're $300 each, and we really just use one for each side. So there's a cost savings of $700 per procedure. Guess what? You do 1,000 procedures a year in one of these hospitals, like that hospital right there, Overland Park. They probably do maybe 1,500, something like that. Well, if you just do 1,000, that's a savings of $700,000. And you're kind of like, well, every time I go to the hospital, my bill is $700,000. But $700,000 is a line item on a hospital that, you know, they'll reward that EP doctor for it, and it'll be noticed up at the CEO level of the hospital. Okay? So this is something that I want to point out because, like I say, you can have a beautiful procedure and you can screw it up on the closing. And if you look at kind of some historical things, and this Vascade was just bought out less than 2 years ago for $510 million. We think, you know, if you kind of look at all the procedures that are out there, there's probably, you know, we know in cardiac EP, there's somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million procedures, and some of those use a couple of our devices. But the bigger market out there is vascular surgery. And, you know, they do the same thing, have the percutaneous approach. And is that my 5-minute mark? Oh, okay. So the market on this is several million procedures, right? And our selling price on the thing is $150. So we think this is a product that has substantial value, and we believe we can get up to, you know, a 10 million run rate here by early next year sometime. So we're really starting at zero here with both of these products, and I've kind of given some examples on why I think these should be taken off for us. So our AMIGO it's a robotic device, and we developed this some time ago, and we put quite a bit of money into it. I think we invested about $45 million into the robot. We got it out there into the marketplace, and everybody loved it. But what we found out is you need a clinical person on site at almost every hospital to encourage the usage of it. And on top of that, we wanted to move directly into a generation 2, which did pretty much the same stuff, but I think it was more just if we had been a little bit smarter on generation 1, it would have all been incorporated in. And so we went out and looked for some money, say, okay, now we really need to get this thing going out there. And there were a couple of companies out there, one called Stereotaxis, one called Hansen, and they both had burned through about $500 million, and one was kind of over-engineered, and one was I think a little bit more scientific. So neither of them really hit the clinical mark, and we think we solved the problem for that. And so the thing right now is sitting on a back burner for us, and we are actively looking for a partner for the device. So this is it. It sits on the bed. This is a catheter handle. So basically your hand fits right on that handle. That gives you a little bit of size proportion there. It's an open architecture where any catheter from any manufacturer can be customized, or we have a handle fit up that's customized to meet those handles. We have kind of a neat little the percutaneous thing to put it into the body on the tip, and this thing, that's kind of it. So it improves the stability of the catheter. So what does that mean? As you're putting the catheter in, it can hold up against the tissue, and that means you get a better patient outcomes. And we did 2 individual single site studies, 50 patients each, and with follow-up at 6 months and 1 year. And using the robot, you get better results than just holding your catheter manually. So believe it or not, you know, as you twist the handle over, it's hard to be kind of steady. So it integrates well into the existing labs and the physician workflow. If you don't want that thing on the table, you can easily just kind of take it off. And basically, with cost reductions that are out there, the biggest thing is, you know, with AFib, a lot of these patients, they come in and they say, well, you know, you might have to have a touch-up, you know, 6 months down the road. But if you look at our single-site studies that we have and the better outcomes, what it means is all of those patients were 100% AFib-free at 1 year. Well, guess what? You know, if one of these procedures is $25,000 or $30,000 across the whole network, say let's take an HCA hospital system, if you can reduce the number of redos that you're doing, you're saving quite a bit of money. Okay, so this is a little bit of an example in the animal lab. The top one shows the robot, how you move it forward and it holds steady just with the respiration rate. Down on the bottom one, not only does it move it around, but you can't hold it between those blue lines, which is the kind of desired pressure that you want. So what they have is a little pressure sensor on the tip of the catheter so that you kind of know what's going on. And this was remarkable because the doctor laughed at me and he said, well, you know, I can hold it steady with my hand. And he's the one that did this in the animal study, a pretty well-known researcher. So market potential here, it's really quite big. And it's big because why? Yeah, you can get some money up front like a razor blade, but if everybody starts using it on every procedure, right, suddenly now it's a product that can do $500 million a year in total revenue. Again, kind of the market opportunity for it. I mean, it's big, so it's easy to use. I mean, and you're often running on the very first procedure, so there's not a big learning curve or any of that. I would say by the third procedure, he's not even looking at the control handle. He's basically looking at all of his screens, which I think also allows him to potentially have better, you know, outcomes with the patient. So financials, we're kind of moving here toward the end. I got my 3-minute warning right now. So we have about 5 million shares outstanding right now. There's some convertible preferred that's out there that can convert at any time. So if we kind of look at it today, there's about 10 million shares out there. And most all of that is, well, I would say 80% of that is in retail hands, right? There's a big chunk here, preferred X that's convertible. Most of that is my shares. There's nothing special about it other than just the way we did the reverse merger that to get shareholder approval, we just did the preferred stock. Our cash position, we just recently raised $8 million. We've added that to the cash that we've got with the company. We'll be announcing our first quarter, and you can kind of then see the cash at that point. So, and our cash burn right now is about a little more than $500,000 a month. We believe we have enough cash to get us down the road at least a couple of years. We believe if that LOCKET really takes off like it is with this 95% gross margin, no more cash is needed into the company. So there are some warrants out there, but they're well out of the money. Our stock is trading now at, you know, $1.30, $1.40 a share, somewhere in there. So the $3 warrants are double where you are. So overall, you know, I would see our technology is, let's see here. That's our conclusion. Give me the 1 minute mark. And, you know, where I think this has value is these things are unique, okay? So we have over 50 patents in the company, believe it or not. And I don't think anybody can copy our VIVO technology. There are people out there that say, oh, I can take the 12-lead ECG and I can interpolate it myself and come up with something. But none of that is patient-specific. So it's more kind of, hey, we know in cardiology what a 12-lead ECG looks like, and this is where we think something's happening. But if you took a physician by himself and said, okay, read through the textbook, here's the ECG on this patient, how much are you going to be correct? It's probably correct 50 to 60% of the time. If you're in there at 99% accuracy, guess what? This is a tool that they all want, and it's inexpensive, right? So if we're selling a disposable at $1,500 and they're saving 3 hours of cath lab time at $5,000 an hour, $15,000 in savings. But more importantly, they can do another procedure during the day. And yes, they do have a backlog of patients in the EP area. So, I mean, you know, so that's another $30,000 in revenue. So a lot of economic reasons to buy that. On the LOCKET, to me, it's more just a slam dunk. They don't, it's a low cost enough that it's never going to hit into the budget cycle or any of that stuff. But the market is big enough that once we get it going, it'll do quite well. Just remember, I've been in this field, right? I know the customers, I know the salespeople, so you know, that's the biggest thing. I'm vested into the company. I'm well underwater, obviously, if you look at the market cap today and the fact that I put in over 30 million. But I'm not discouraged because I know I'm in this for the long term, and I know you know, the values on this stuff are in that $500,000 to $1 billion range just for this type of stuff. Yeah. All adjunctive to the therapy that is needed in these patients, right? Okay, since I'm the last of the day, I guess we've got an open floor and some time to take some questions. How about questions from the audio visual people back there? Could you hear everything just fine? Yeah. Yeah, so that's a good question. So you know, we have just a little bit of revenue going on right now, but it's of a de minimis amount. And I would say you can expect that for the first quarter and second quarter. In the third quarter, we believe, you know, like I said, we've got 70 accounts that we're in the process of bringing in. Those things take longer than you think, right? So doctor says, oh, I really get this. Let's bring it in and try it out. Well, doctors, they used to have enough clout. They said, bring it in tomorrow morning. I got a patient, right? They can't do that anymore. There's a lot of rules that the hospitals put on them. I think they're trying to save money or something. I don't know why. But so you have to go to administration. You've got to get their approval. And sometimes that can take several months. Then you have to make sure that the doctor's got a few patients all lined up within 1 week so that you're kind of coming in and proving it and trying to make sure that a couple other doctors working with him see it also, right? So there's a little bit of kind of logistics there. So overall, you know, I think we'll see some limited sales then coming in through the third quarter and then the fourth quarter. And basically on this product, I kind of like to look at, well, how many installed, you know, good using customers will we have by the end of this year? And I think that number is around 20. And then by the end of next year, I'd like to see it go to at least 50, but we'll see. So we've hired this sales force on. If they're as gung-ho as it looks like the early results are, you know, I mean, I don't know if they just sent an email to a doctor and said, David, I'm really working on him, or if they've truly got an account that wants this. We do know, you know, some accounts do a lot more ventricular procedures than others, and those are the accounts we're going after first, and those are the ones that truly need it as much. But if you look at that one heart hospital in New Mexico, I think they brought it in and said, okay, we're not doing that many patients, but this looks like it'll work. Well, how did they buy that much in disposables? They figured it out, and they said, oh, let's expand the patients we're looking at. Let's, you know, use this as a kind of an attractive and a new business for the hospital. And you know, the first, always in medical devices, the first accounts you go after are the teaching centers, and they may not quite see that commercial aspect. Oh, look, we can go from, you know, 20 procedures to 100 procedures this year, where if you're out in the, what I call the more commercial accounts, like the Heart Hospital in New Mexico or that other one that was the HCA Hospital Overland Park, I think they will get it and, you know, start bringing in the business. So it's really kind of how I look at it. If you look at the end of not this year, but next year, and we do have 50 accounts out there, and we are getting publications, we are having talks. We just went to the European Heart Rhythm Association last week over in Barcelona. And I don't know, we walked out of there with, you know, 15 solid leads on people that wanted us to bring it in and try it out. But more importantly, we had a dinner presentation, and one of the doctors got up and said, I will use this on every patient that we have in the hospital. So if you start getting those talks going and publications going, I think we had like 3 different publications or abstracts, talks at that meeting, then the word starts getting out. So it kind of snowballs. So that makes sense. So revenue, really, I think we should be looking at the third quarter before it really starts initiating. Next question. Yep. Yeah, but still probably a little bit slowly. But then I think next year you'll start seeing both of those products kick in pretty well. I mean, it takes a while for a pipeline to get going. And well, the LOCKET, we don't really want to stub our toe on that either, right? But next year, I think I kind of said, if you kind of just imagine, right, how many salespeople you out there and say, okay, you call on 20 hospitals, those 20 hospitals are all doing 1,000 patients. Pretty soon, the number times $150, sometimes two in each of those patients, you get up to over 10 million pretty quickly next year. Yep. Yeah, these, so with both of these products, they're absorbing that into their costs that they're doing for a procedure, right? And the 150, that's pretty absorbable, especially if you can get rid of using the Vascade device. On the VIVO, we actually have now hired a kind of an expert to help us get a separate CPT code for that. There is a code out there that talks about pre-procedural imaging, and we think we can temporarily use that once we apply for the CPT code. And our goal there is to get about $1,000 reimbursement for the hospital. So even if they're paying $1,500 for the patches, if they're getting $1,000, the hospitals will love it, right? Plus, they also can bill separately for that MRI and the CT scan. And they're getting the ventricular procedure out of it too, right? And saving the 3 hours. Yep. So we're kind of locked. We're primed. I wouldn't hesitate to put my mother into the stock. Well, which is what I've done with, you know, a lot of my money that I've put in. It's de-risking it for everybody, right? I mean, if we still had clinical trials to do, and like I say, you know, only a 90% accuracy, I wouldn't tell my friends to put money in. But you know, at this point, it's like it's almost a no-brainer. Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay. All right. I think our company has sponsored some alcohol downstairs. Thanks, guys.